In 1995, the cult movie series Three Ninjas got a new director. His name was Simon Sheen, but Simon Sheen had a secret. That wasn't his real name. His real name was Shin Sang-ok, and he had a wife. And in 1978, she was one of the most famous actresses in South Korea. And that very same year, she took an international flight to Hong Kong for a business meeting. And within hours, she had vanished. 6 months later, he flew to Hong Kong to find her. And he vanished too. They would spend the next 8 years making films for a dictator who had decided his country's cinema was bad and that these two were going to fix it. And for a short time, they did. Shin Sang-ok directed 74 films, and that number undersells him. His company Shin Films produced over 200 movies. In 1967, he brought the Anyang studio outside Seoul, sound stages, processing labs, the lot. And to cover what it cost to run, he had to put out close to 30 films a year. He was not a director with a production arm attached. He was the South Korean film industry, or near enough. Choi Eun-hee had made over 130 films. A Flower in Hell in 1958, The House Guest, and My Mother in 1961. She was the biggest star in the country through the 60s, still working through the 70s, and by then running an art school as its principal. And she directed 3 films of her own, starting in 1965 with The Girl Raised as a Future Daughter-in-Law. Korea in the 60s did not have women directing films. She was one of the first who did. And hold on to that information because it does matter. They married in 1954. They made films together, and he ran the studio. She was on screen. And for about 15 years, that was the most powerful working partnership in Korean cinema. Then it came apart in just 2 moves. Both of them were his fault. The first was in 1975. Shin made a film called Rose and Wild Dog. The censors cut a scene out of it. When the trailer went into the cinemas, the scene was still in the trailer. The government's response was not a fine. They revoked Shin's film license. The company was finished. The studio, the 200 films, the 30-a-year machine, all of it, all over in a flash. Just over one piece of footage that he had to remove, but screened anyway. He spent the next 3 years trying to get the license back. In his own words, for 3 years, he tried everything he could and got nowhere. The second was in 1976. Choi divorced him. She had found out he had fathered children with another actress. Her name was Oh So-mi, and she is the same woman in the scene the censors cut out. So by 1977, the man who built the biggest studio in the country has no license, no company, no wife. He had been destroyed, and not by an enemy, but by his own government, and by himself. Suddenly he had nothing to lose, it seemed, and therefore he became an easy target. In 1978, Choi Eun-hee was offered a way out of her own problems, a business contact in Hong Kong, a film to direct, and an investor for her to school. She flew out on the 11th of January and was driven to Repulse Bay, a beach on the south side of Hong Kong Island. From there, she enters a boat, and it seems from there she was sedated with a needle. None of that was filmed. The most famous kidnapping in the history of cinema, and no images of it exist. In Seoul, she was simply gone. The story ran across Asia, and the theories ran with it. She had defected, she had run off, she had drowned. There was nobody, no ransom, and no claim. Shin Sang-ok was not her husband anymore. They had divorced 2 years prior, and he had given her every reason to want nothing further to do with him. But In his pursuit of love, or maybe the want for forgiveness, he went to Hong Kong anyway. He arrived in July asking questions about a woman he was no longer married to, in a city where she had disappeared, following leads handed to him by people he believed were friends. On the 19th of July 1978, 6 months and 5 days after Chung On-hee walked onto the beach in South Hong Kong, he too was taken. But what Choi Hong-hee had in terms of her captivity was rather strange. It was full of hospitality, a villa, staff, study sessions. She was a guest who could not leave. However, he did not get the same treatment. Again, he had nothing to lose, and that is exactly why they took him, to save their country's most prized asset, the film industry. But they had to break him first. He ran. The plan was to cross a frozen river into China. It failed, and he was caught. He was sent to prison number 6. He was there until February 1983, roughly 4 years. The diet was grass and corn flour. He wrote confessions. He studied until somebody decided he had studied it enough. On the 23rd of February 1983, they let him out. Not because he had served his sentence. The man who had ordered all of this had finally decided it was time to start work. In 1978, Kim Jong-il was not running North Korea. His father was. He was 36, and North Korea meant the film industry. And he did not treat it as a posting, he treated it as a career. In 1973, he published a book about it. It was called On the Art of Cinema, not a pamphlet, a full treatise, assembled from 5 years of speeches he had given to directors and writers, setting out a theory of film. It is still the foundational text of North Korean cinema. He had opinions about story structure, the seed theory about how every core. The man had taught about this more than most people who do it for a living. And most importantly, he knew that North Korean films were bad, but he didn't want a better system. He wanted the man, and the country he wanted the man from was a country they were not on speaking terms with, so he had him taken from a beach. In March 1983, Shin was brought to a party. 5 years since Hong Kong, and there she was, Choi Hong-hee, standing in the room. Neither of them had known the other was in the country. She'd been there for 5 years. He had been there for 5 years, and nobody had thought to mention it, because separately, they were just 2 prisoners, and together, they were a film unit, and Kim Jong-il was saving them for when he wanted to start. They were forced to remarry, and within a month, that's exactly what happened. And that wasn't it. Now he was considered to be educated. Kim Jong-il's master plan could begin. It was time for him to make North Korea the best film industry in the world. He gave Shin a nearly unlimited budget to make films, and he let him start a company of his own. Shin was allowed to name it. He called it Shin Film, the very same name of the company that Park Chung-hee took off him in 1975 over a trailer. His own government destroyed his studio and ignored him for 3 years while he begged for his license back. Then a man he had never met kidnapped him, starved him in a camp for 4 years, and handed him back the very thing his own country had taken from him, and with more money than he ever had in Seoul. He'd not made a film in 5.5 years, but that didn't stop him. He was hungry to do something with these unlimited resources. In 3 years, he directed 7 films and produced 20 in a country that made a handful a year, in a language of cinema he had learnt from nothing, starting from a prison camp in his late 50s. An emissary of no return was one of them. A Korean envoy forces his way into the 1907 Hague Conference to plead for his country's independence, is ignored, and kills himself in front of the delegates. He was revolutionizing North Korean cinema, and his remarried wife co-directed it. The film had individual crew credits, whereas before this, the films that were made did not list the crew members. It has Western actors playing Western parts instead of Koreans in wigs. It has footage shot outside the country. It is the first North Korean film with sequences from beyond the border. And for a domestic audience, that alone made it extraordinary. It was a look at the outside world. Choi Eun-hee collected it. A film made by two kidnapped South Koreans for the man who kidnapped them won a prize at a European film festival, and the woman who was being held against her will walked up and took it. It played at the London Film Festival that November. By now, news of the director and wife combo's new North Korean films had hit South Korea. South Korean protesters picketed the screening. Then Salt in 1985, and Choi won Best Actress at the Moscow International Film Festival for it. Kim was delighted, so he built them a studio, 66,000 square meters, 4 stages, 6 screening rooms. His dream was coming true. Internationally recognized films. For about 3 years, Shin Sang-ok was the best resource director in Asia and potentially the world. And he got there by being abducted. Next up was Pulgasari. A blacksmith's daughter brings a monster to life out of rice and blood. The monster eats the iron, grows, and helps the peasants tear down the feudal king. It is a kaiju film, and a proper kaiju film, because Chin got Toho involved. The suit was modelled at Toho Studios by Yasumaru. Inside it was Satsuma, who had just played Godzilla in The Return of Godzilla. There was a 15-person effects team and 13,000 extras. The Korean People's Army supplied the armies. And is it any good? Well, it's competent, it is enormous, and the monster work holds up next to what Toho were doing at the time, which it should, because it is the same people. But watch the last act. The monster and the peasants race to free them does not stop when the king falls. It keeps eating. It consumes the people it liberated. And that is a film produced by Hereditary Dictatorship, about a force summoned to liberate the masses that becomes an appetite they cannot survive. He did that on purpose, nobody can prove. He never claimed it. Kim Jong-il paid for it and loved it. Make of that what you like. But for all the success, something wasn't right, because Song Eun-hee was hiding a secret. She always carried a micro-cassette recorder in her handbag, who had directed 3 films of her own 20 years earlier. She knew what a recorder was for, and she knew how to run one without looking at it. Every time they were summoned to Kim Jong-il, it was running. On the 19th of October, 1983, he talked about the kidnapping. Not defensively, not in code. He explained the operation, how he had asked who the best director in South Korea was, and been told it was Shin, and how vulnerable he was. They now had the man who ordered it describing ordering it in his own voice, and they needed it because of what he made them do next. In April 1984 in Belgrade, Shin and Choi were both put in front of the international press and made to say they went to North Korea voluntarily, that they had chosen this. It went out around the world. He had turned the screw and made it impossible for them to leave North Korea. Every escape route ends at a border guard, an embassy officer, a journalist, and every one of them had seen the press conference. The tape was not a souvenir. It was the only thing they could do to contradict their own filmed confession. And this expensive movie dream that they were living in was just that, a dream. A dream that could be more aptly described as a nightmare. A nightmare that both Choi and Shin wanted to wake up from. They had to leave, and so they planned their escape. By 1986, they had earned enough trust to travel. That was the whole strategy. Make the films, take the prizes, be useful, be reliable, and get sent abroad. On the 12th of March 1986, they checked into the Intercontinental in Vienna. The reason for being there was an interview with a Japanese journalist called Akira Eneki. The North Korean minders were in the room. Shin, now 60, and Choi, 59, managed to talk them into stepping out of the room. Then they went down, got a taxi, and told the driver where to go. They were immediately chased by the minders, a car chase through Vienna, just like a film. And they ran the last of it on foot. 8 years, 2 months, and 1 week after Choi Hun-hee was put on a boat at Repulse Bay, they were inside a building North Korea could not enter. They asked for asylum. They had the films they made, and they had the tapes. And the tapes are why the world believed them rather than believe in the press conference in Belgrade. But the tapes didn't really help. South Korea's intelligence service was not certain about them and refused to take them back. So 2 South Korean filmmakers who had been stolen by North Korea went to America. And there they became citizens. They took on new names, Simon and Teresa Sheen. Their story became known, and Simon Sheen went on to work in the American film industry, producing and directing the sequels to a children's martial arts franchise about 3 brothers who fight burglars. 3 Ninjas Knuckle Up had built the largest studio in South Korea and lost it over a trailer, had been taken off the street in Hong Kong, had spent 4 years in a North Korean prison eating grass, had made 7 films for a man who put him there, won prizes in Europe, and recorded that man confessing the whole thing. And the credit at the end of the film said Simon Sheen. The kaiju film Pulgasari was banned in North Korea the moment they ran. It surfaced in Japan on video in 1995, played at Tokyo cinemas in 1998, and eventually became the first North Korean film shown in South Korean theaters. They were allowed back in South Korea in 1999, and Shin Sang-ok died in 2006. Choi Eun-hee died in 2018 at the age of 91, having outlived her director, her kidnapper, and the studio. Kim Jong-il wanted films that could stand up in the outside world, and he was right that his country could not make them. He was right about the sea theory and the sameness and the nursery schools. He understood the problem better than most ministers of culture ever had. He just could not understand that the thing he was missing was not a director. It was the freedom to make what you want, which is the one thing he was never going to be able to steal off a beach or anywhere else.